Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. This is like take three because I keep cracking myself up over here like a little weirdo. So I'm gonna I keep having to tell myself, pull it together, pull it together. Okay, and we're back. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here with me. You guys, I made so many notes about this sucker because I got some things to say, something that's been on my mind. And I just got brought back up because that's how spiritual team on the job works, okay? So, okay, I was just talking with a friend and their son was trying to catch their airplane, right? Like at the airport, they were flying back home. And I started thinking about in the airport how like when you're in a rush, like is it better to take like the moving walkway, like that big conveyor belt, or is it better to just like haul ass and like run? So I was just thinking about this and it reminded me, right? It reminded me of a conversation that I had with my sweetie. And we were talking about how okay, so not only has let me start here. This topic has come up with my sweetie, but I have seen this topic in action so many times over the years. In my yoga classes, in people talking to me after class, in my workshops, at my retreats with my coaching clients, my mentoring clients. This topic today has come up again and again and again. And I guarantee you at some point in your life, I mean, maybe I can't say 100%, but I have a sneaking suspicion that sometime in your life you have had this thought, this situation, or this problem, however we want to define this sucker. So today's episode title you saw, it's called The Conveyor Belt. Now, here's the thing. I was talking with my sweetie and we were talking about just relationships in general. And here's the thing about relationships. There is a lot of fluctuation in them often. They're not always stuck or stagnant. Sometimes there are periods of growth, sometimes there are periods of not growth. Sometimes there are periods of coming together, sometimes there are periods of pulling apart, right? We're just talking about like humans in relationship trying to like create like a life together. You know what I mean? Like if you are sharing a household or a business or whatever, a family with people, you got, as soon as you have two people involved, shit's gonna go down. You know what I'm saying? Because you've got people's personalities, you've got their egos, you've got their past and their history, you've got their previous traumas, you've got their beliefs and their stories and their identities. Like it's amazing, you guys, that the population continues to like grow and that humans continue to exist. Although at this rate, the way we're abusing the planet, who knows, you know? But here's the thing. Okay, this is what I want to get into about the conveyor belt. Um, so often when we are in a relationship with another person, especially if it's romantic, if it's intimate, if it's like a level three teaching, as the Course in Miracles would say, like you guys are going to spend a good chunk of time together, right? There can be sometimes this insidious little thought that will creep into your mind. It's really like a little way of judgment. It's like kind of a little way of like attacking your partner or your person. And this insidious little thought is this. It's some version of this. I'm more spiritual than them. I'm more evolved than them. I've done more quote unquote work on myself than them. Okay. And when I've been in conversations with people over the years, right, they usually, and if you're listening to this and not watching, I'll explain what I'm doing because they usually do some sort of hand gestures when they're basically kind of judging their partners. But they're kind of giving me like show and tell, right? And they'll say, well, I'm kind of like up here. And they'll raise their hand high, like above the top of their head or so. And they'll say, and they're down here. And there's usually like a significant gap, right? They'll be like, I'm more evolved. Like I've done the work. I'm more spiritual. Like I'm up here high. And then they're down here. Or they kind of do more of the conveyor belt, like more instead of vertical, they do more the horizontal. And they'll say, well, I'm more here, like they're forward, like they're more evolved, right, on the evolution journey. And they're back here, like they're behind me, right? And that's the other thing. Like, so they always using their hands to kind of show me just how, like, they're in the higher position or the more forward position or the dominant position or the position where they're just like, call it what it is. They're saying, like, I'm just better. I'm better than you. Oh my God. And then we go on, right? We go on. And look, we've all done it. Oh my God, double amen hands. Can we just be honest with ourselves and each other right now? We say shit like this, right? We say this is ridiculous, but it's true sometimes. Sometimes it's true. I'll give that caveat. However, we also say this. We say, well, if only they would. And what follows that blank space, if only they would. I always say, now just go ahead and insert what you consider now is your expert diagnosis about what's wrong with them, or your armchair expert solution to whatever you deem their issue was and what you think they should do about it. Because if only they would insert your diatribe, right, then the relationship would work. Then the relationship would be better. What we're really saying is, then I would be happier. If you only change, if only you would just do some damn work or read a book, or listen to a podcast or whatever, right? Went to therapy, if only you did this, then this could work out. And I will tell you this, you guys, this kind of thinking, I'm just like grabbing my face right now because it's this kind of thinking that has started the slow decline, right? Let's call it the demise of a relationship. And I'm sure it has been the demise of many a relationship, way more than one relationship, is when we start to think that we know better how they should do it. They need to. I want them to change, right? Like I'm so much more forward on the conveyor belt than you are. And this is the thing about the conveyor belt. If you've ever been in an airport, right? And especially if you've done this with a friend, right? So sometimes you're traveling with somebody and they're just like walking along or whatever, taking their time, getting to their gate, doing whatever they want to do. And you're just like the person who's like always in a rush and like you're on your phone or you're doing like 18,000 things and you just get on the conveyor belt. And the thing is when you're first walking together, for about a moment there, right? Like they're right there next to you. And then as soon as you get on that conveyor belt, like you take off, right? And because it's motorized, it's moving at a faster pace. Like you're just going to get ahead of them unless you start running alongside them. And who wants to feel like they always have to run to catch up to the other person? You know what I mean? But let's talk about this because what happens is you start to get this crazy thought in your head that let's just call it what is it? We would just say that you think you're special, you think that you're better than or smarter than, or you've done more work. And look, here's the reality. Maybe that's true. Maybe you have done. Maybe you've read more books or studied with more people or took the course or went to therapy or did whatever. But the reality of it is that like you got into this relationship with this person under the guise of like, I love you, you love me, or I like you like me. We think each other's pretty great. And then some stuff starts to shift and starts to happen. And it's this kind of mindset, right? This kind of mindset. And I can speak from it from this point of view because of the work that I do in the world, that I tend to work with people who are doing personal development work, who are doing spiritual work, who are doing like, let's call it change work or growth work. Okay. So this mindset starts to sneak into people who have started to do some personal development work. And they think all kinds of things, right? So what happens is you start to get a little more self-awareness. You start to realize like, which you had to have some sort of realization or you wouldn't be working with me or going to therapy or doing whatever, right? Reading your books, listening to your podcast, whatever. But some part of your life wasn't going well. And then you decided to do something about it. And then you start to get like just enough knowledge, just enough insight to be like what I call dangerous, right? So you start to get a little bit of self-awareness. You might start to have what, the coaching world loves to call like breakthroughs or aha moments. And you start to go like, oh, so like that's what I was doing. then nowadays, because of the internet and social media and all the Instagram, the Instagram therapists out there, all the quote unquote Instagram experts, you start to develop a little bit more of understanding, whether it's around your nervous system or the psychology of how things work. You learn about the unconscious. You start to learn about polyvagal theory or attachment theory or how to work with your vagus nerve or identity, whatever it is, right? You start to get like enough information to stop being a pain in the ass, is what I kind of think sometimes, right? Not a pain in the ass to yourself so much, but it's when we take these things and then we start to kind of like inflict them on other people. And I've seen this so many times, you guys, right? I'm not saying that I'm not, I say all the time when I'm talking with people, like I'm not here to psychoanalyze you, right? But a lot of times it's so much easier for us to see patterns in other people. It's so much easier for us to see people's what I call blind spots to their own bullshit, right? So once we start to get a little self-awareness about ourselves, we now sometimes think that we have received like the golden ticket to just start opening our mouths to everybody else. So we start to feel a little bit more confident about like saying things to them like, I've noticed this or da 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 da, right? And we all do it. I know I've done it. I try not to do it unsolicited, you know what I mean? But sometimes it happens. And sometimes we definitely do it out of love. We're not doing it to be malicious or mean or manipulative or whatever. We just have an insight and like we share it. But it can get tricky sometimes if we feel like really comfy, if we get like a little extra comfy and overconfident and starting to psychoanalyze our partners. Like, your sweetie doesn't want to be psychoanalyzed. They want to be loved. They want to be seen and heard and feel welcomed and that you accept them. They don't want you and all of your thousands of solutions to their problems that you've deemed problems, unless, of course, they ask you. You know what I'm saying? So even if we're right, even if we've looked at them, looked at the situation, looked at the relationship, and we assess some things and we're like, yeah, that could change if only they did this, da 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 da. We might be right, quote unquote. We might be accurate in our assessment. But it's like we don't like people coming at us like that. There is a way to talk about these things in your relationship. But if you fancy yourself on the conveyor belt way ahead of your partner, and now you're looking back and you're lobbing your diagnoses and your psychoanalyzing and your solutions and what they should do or need to do or blah, 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 man, that is going to cause like so not soothing. It will just be so not soothing. So like let's kind of get into this for a minute because if you think for a moment like I'm so much more evolved than you, I'm so much more spiritual than you, I've done so much more work than you. If you're secretly thinking this, what happens is it kind of what's the word I'm looking for? When you put like a kink in a hose, like, water is flowing through the hose. Like you guys are just doing your relationship. And then all of a sudden there's a kink in the hose. Well, not only does the water stop coming out, so the love is not moving forward to and fro to each other, right? But it creates a buildup of pressure. There's kind of like this pressure that gets, this tension that will get created in a relationship. It will start to create conflict. When you think you're better than them, when you think that you are, you know, yeah, more evolved, whatever the word is, then it will definitely create a kink in your relationship, especially if you want the relationship to thrive, to be organic, where people are allowed to grow at their own pace, to discover things at their own pace. If one person is insisting that the other person hurries up, and we just can't do that. If we start keeping the focus on them, like if only they would do this. And I always say, when they, then I. So when they do this, then I will be able to be happy. And if we insist that another person changes so that we feel better, we feel more comfortable, we feel happier. And like caveat, right? Side note, sidebar. I'm doing this thing with my hands, little timeout sidebar over here. I'm not talking about like obviously really dangerous things, right? Like, oh, if they would stop hitting me or beating me or abusing me. Like those are no-brainer things. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about these kind of like insidious little thoughts where we start to do a little work on ourselves and then we start to think. Because what happens is when we start to do work on ourselves, the focus is on us. And then it can be really fucking tempting to take the focus off of ourselves and to turn it. And I'm kind of doing this thing where like I got my hand facing towards my face, like I'm looking in the mirror, and we take that focus and then we turn it and we turn it around. And now it's looking at everybody else, but specifically our partner, right? That person you chose to shack up with or have kids with or marry or whatever, have a commitment to, right? Because what happens is a lot of times is people start using spirituality as a weapon. They weaponize spirituality. They start to spiritualize like blaming and shaming and guilting other people, right? They start to kind of take these things and they use it as a way to kind of get out of the glare of their own bullshit, their own, as I call it, say, because when we're focusing on what other people are doing wrong, when we're focusing on them all the time out there, instead of looking in here, when we turn on them, right? And we start to say, here's a massive blind spot that you have to your own bullshit. I would say right there, that's a blind spot to our own bullshit. Because as soon as we take the focus off ourselves and we stop putting it on them, it's just a way of just like distracting ourselves from the work that we probably still have to do. So here's what I wrote down, right? We sometimes think like, well, I've done so much work, it can't possibly. Oh my God, the ego mind is so insane. It couldn't possibly be me. Do you know how many books I've read? Do you know how many friggin', courses I've taken? Do you know how much mentoring, whatever it is, right, that I've done? Oh my God. So here's the thing. We never find peace if we insist on blaming other people, right? If we insist on making, and now look, again, I'm going back to the no-brainer stuff. There will be times that if somebody just stopped doing gambling away all your money so you can't feed your kids, of course, there are situations where it's very clear that if this person stopped doing this, yeah, there probably would be more peace in the household. But I'm not talking about that. As long as one person's being blamed for everything, there won't be peace. It's not going to work that way. The reality of it is it takes two to tango. Whatever dynamic, and I'm bringing my two fists together, like I'm fitting my knuckles together, like, how they would fit. However a relationship works, it's almost never exclusively just one person causing all the problems. There is a dynamic at play. Even if, let's say, somebody has, addiction issues, they have a dependency on a drug, alcohol, whatever the thing is, an over dependency, whatever. Some part of you, unless you did not know that blindly, 100% did not know going in, right? Some part of you either recognized the behavior, thought I can change them or fix them or whatever. There's always like, this codependency. So I've talked about this in the past, like one of the best things that I ever did for myself, where I learned to keep the focus on myself, was going to Al-Anon. Like I went to Al-Anon and I realized like, oh, you might have a little codependent streak. And I'll never forget, I've told this story before. I used to get so pissed. I would get so pissed at my sponsor. Because just like how in AA, right, Alcoholics Anonymous, there's sponsors. In Al-Anon, you also get a sponsor. And I got a sponsor. And Lauren used to tell me all the time to keep my fucking eyes on my own paper, keep the focus on yourself. I would always be like, yeah, but yeah, but, right? I was the queen of the yeah, but. Oh my God. It was so not soothing when I realized I was part of the problem. Okay. So here's the thing. Every relationship is going to have conflict. Every relationship is going to have problems. Every relationship is going to have times where you disagree or whatever. But there's like two people. There's two people at work. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing I want to say. Let's say you are on the conveyor belt and you feel like you are moving ahead. Maybe you're starting to feel like you're moving too far ahead or dangerously ahead. You're not feeling connected to your person anymore. You're not feeling attracted to them anymore. You're feeling just like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff. They're not doing anything. The reality is this: we cannot, number one, save people from themselves. We cannot drag people forward to your pace, to where you are, to how you want them to be. And sadly, there might come a time when the relationship falls apart and you eventually have to leave them behind, right? That's all true. But first, before all of that, before the relationship comes to an end, before you start working all your bullshit and your manipulation and all your stuff, and we're going to get into that in a second, we got to ask the question like, what about me? What about me? Right? Keep the focus on myself. So we got to ask myself, like, we got to ask ourselves these kind of questions. Where am I in this? Like, what's the role that I'm playing in this? What's my bullshit to own? What's my pattern, my history, my way of behaving, my thought process, right? The way that I show up and all that stuff, right? Because if I keep the focus on you and what I perceive as you doing wrong, I then don't have to take my part of it. I don't have to own my own bullshit. I don't have to own my own, my own piece of it, where the responsibility lies. So if I keep the focus on you, I feel like I get to be the superior one. And the ego mind loves this. It just loves to be special. And it will make you special by either being superior or shittier. That's what it does, right? You get to be special because you're so great, or don't people know how bad you have it, right? But if we take the focus off of them and we keep the focus on our own journey, our own work, our own development, our own spiritual growth, our own change, right? Evolution of change, because we're always usually changing, right? That's usually the one consistent thing, is that there's change. Now, sometimes I get it. People do get stuck, and they get stuck for long periods of time. But it's not for us to drag people out of their positions. They have to want to change on some level, or it's not going to work. Okay. Now, if we do put the focus on them, of course, we're going to find things where we're like, yeah, maybe if they changed this or did this or changed their attitude or blah, 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 read a book, as I jokingly say sometimes, right? Yeah, of course, we could find a bunch of things wrong with everybody around us. But if, the reality of it is that we've just got to keep the focus on ourselves. And that's the thing. That's one of the scary things about relationships, right? Is we have to have vulnerability in relationships. We have to have trust. And if you have trust in another person, we have to trust that they're going to, like, when we go into it and we partner up and pair up, we don't go into it usually thinking, right? Like, well, I'm going to do all the work and they're not going to do any. No, we go in, we trust each other. We create a certain amount of vulnerability immediately when we trust each other. And that's just it. Relationships require a lot of courageous vulnerability. You know what I mean? To say, like, I'm going to go into this. And it can be really scary. I know. A lot of people don't like to be really vulnerable. A lot of people don't like it. It makes them feel, first of all, it makes them feel afraid. It makes them feel uncertain. And some people feel weak when they're vulnerable. They don't trust that people aren't going to use their vulnerability against them, to harm them, to make fun of them, like whatever. I know that 100%. I know that feeling. But the reality of it is that intimacy and true connection in a relationship, and I'm not just talking about physical intimacy and sex. I mean intimacy, like really knowing each other, really seeing each other, really being able to hold each other in difficult times, right? That intimacy takes courage, and somebody's got to go first, and somebody's got to be willing to say, like, I'm going to keep the focus on myself, right? Yes, there eventually might come a time when, quote unquote, you outgrow each other. I'm doing the thing with my hands again. But in the meantime, here's the thing. We can't always just be insisting that the other person has to go first. We can't be doing that whole tit and tat thing, like, I did this and you didn't do this, or you're keeping score. I was talking with my friend the other day, joking about the chalkboard in my head that's got the little marks on it. And I make it a chalkboard because I can erase those marks anytime that I want to, right? But I'd be a liar if I didn't say there wasn't a chalkboard in my head. And maybe I'll do a whole episode about that someday. So the reality of it is like if we're going to be in relationship with each other, first and foremost, we got to be in relationship with ourself. That's numero uno. You with the divine, you with spirit, however you want to talk about that, but you contained as you, right? And then there's other people. So we have to choose to be the best self that we can be. To me, I find that really attractive when people are like willing to quote unquote work on themselves. They want to grow. They want to understand themselves better. They want to know why they do what they do, say what they say, think what they think, act the way they act. They don't want to just chalk it up to, their history, their past, their trauma. They can't help it. It's like, no, to me, that just wouldn't, at this age, I definitely wouldn't get into a relationship with somebody. I mean, I'm happily married with my sweetie. But I often say one of the reasons why I married him is he is self-aware enough and he's willing to grow and change. I wanted somebody who would also like me because I am willing to grow and change. And we don't always like to hear it, right? We don't always like to know like, oh shit, I still have work to do. But here's the reality, as long as we're alive, I always say this, as long as I am alive and conscious and breathing, I will probably have work to do because I'm human and I'm clumsy and I have a lot, I have a lot to continue to grow into. And I'm okay with that. As long as I'm alive, there'll be work to do. And as long as I'm alive, I'll probably keep trying, right? So that's the deal though I made with myself. And then I also extend that, right, courtesy also to my sweetie. So here's the thing. There are going to be times maybe when your partner doesn't want to do the work. They're not willing to do the work. They don't want to do the work. But we have to give people space to move at their own pace. You can't get on the conveyor belt and stop moving wicked fast and then get pissed at them because they're walking along beside you. Because before the conveyor belt, you guys were just walking alongside each other. And then you put things into high gear. You made a choice. And one of the things is like, I've seen this so many times in mentoring. One of the questions I often ask people if they're partnered in some way is I'll say, does your sweetie know that you're doing this work? Or if they're a single parent, I'll say, and if their kids are an appropriate age, right? I'll say, do your kids know that you're doing this work? Do the people in your life who know you, love you, you spend time with, you have relationships with, friendships, family, sweeties, whoever, do they know you are embarking on this journey of self-awareness, self-discovery, change work, whatever? Because one of the things that often happens is people start to go when they do this work and they start to feel differently. They start to think differently. They start to change, but they haven't clued anybody in their life in for whatever reason. They think they'll get made fun of. They're too embarrassed. They feel too vulnerable, like talking about spiritual mentoring work or coaching work with me or whatever. And I'm like, I think it would be helpful. Again, maybe not in every single case. People have to decide that for themselves. But I do say, like, hey, it might be good to let people in on what you're doing, the books you're reading, the things we're talking about, what you're learning about yourself, the aha moments. And again, I tell them, like, keep the focus on yourself. Because what a lot of people do with the wisdom that they gain through doing this kind of mentoring work and coaching work, what they do with the resources and the tools and the changes is they then start to inflict them on the people around them. And if the people around them have no idea what the fuck is going on, that you're even doing this work or why you're changing, it can become very threatening to them. If you're like always going, people have told me this before. Oh my God, my husband is so sick of me saying, KK said, well, KK said, well, KK said, this person doesn't know me. They've never met me. And all they know is my name is connected to change in their partner. Right. So I'm like, hey, can we maybe like just let them know you're doing this work and that you're learning and you're excited about something and you're enthusiastic, like you're making an investment in yourself to whatever, like, you know what I mean? I want the people to know. But here's what we don't want to do is then take all that stuff and then start burning it onto other people. Nobody in your life is going to evolve probably by being hassled, by being picked at, by being picked on, by being blamed, by being shamed, by telling them, you know what you need to do? You start psychoanalyzing them, you start pathologizing them, because you're taking the information that was first geared and gained towards you for you, and now you're turning it on them. When you start making the people in your life try to feel wrong because they're not on the same conveyor belt, moving at the same speed as you, doing the same shit as you, it doesn't usually end well. You can't shame people. You know, my teacher, David Bedrick, who one of my teachers, right? He talks a lot about the unshaming way. He talks about shame a lot. And he's like, you can't shame other people into being better. You're not going to make them a better person by making them feel shitty, right? And shaming them. You can try it, but you know where it ends up? It always ends up with like the mutual resentment club, because you start to resent them for not changing. And then sometimes they start to resent you. So you resent them for not even trying to change. And then they resent you for trying to change them. And it just doesn't work out. It just doesn't work out. You have to let people grow at their own pace. And the thing is like, that's how the relationship is actually going to evolve, is organically and naturally, symbiotically, like you're each supporting each other and lifting each other up, because that's what's actually going to have the relationship grow stronger and deeper and more connected and more intimate and more trust. That's what leads to that, but not you all of a sudden like looking at them and saying, this is what you need to do. This is what you didn't do, right? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that psychoanalyzing stuff. So here's the thing. This is the note I really want to make sure that I say. Okay. You kind of, like I said, you have to give your partner, your people, space to grow and to implement things. Okay. There does come a point, I will say this, there might come a point in your relationship where you have to ask yourself, if you're looking at your partner and you're having the thoughts of like, they're never going to change, or this is what's wrong with them, or if only they did this, if you start getting into all of those weird thoughts, right? You got to ask yourself, are they just in a temporary phase, right? Are they just struggling because they just lost their job, or a parent died, or, you know, they've been having a tough time with X, Y, and Z with their health, da, 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 their mental health. We have to ask, is this a phase? Is this just a phase? Are they normally the kind of person that likes to do X, Y, and Z? Or do we have like a fundamental difference? Do we have like a core values at that level of what matters to us? Misalignment. Is there a misalignment of what matters? Because that's a totally different thing. If you get to the place where you both agree that what matters to you and where you're going and what you're doing is just not something they're interested in, that's when the talk might have to get more serious, right? So we got to start with that. We got to ask that question. Is it a phase, or is it a fundamental like misalignment of what we want, who we are, where we're going, etc., right? Are our core values not aligned anymore? Because the thing is that people and relationships, just like the tide, you know how the tide goes in and out, you know how the water goes up and down. That's humans, that's relationships. It ebbs and flows, it rises and falls. People grow, people change, and sometimes they're stuck and they just chase their own tail for a while. We've all done it. We've all done it. So here are some suggestions. Take them or leave them. But these are things that I have found helpful in my own life, because I was sitting there and asking myself, like, okay, so when I've been on the conveyor belt and my trajectory has been moving a little bit fast, right? What are some things that have been helpful to me so that you don't blow up? You don't blow up your relationships, right? So number one, lead by example. Right? It says in A Course in Miracles, to teach is to demonstrate. So you demonstrate your new behaviors, your new beliefs, your new ways of being, right? Keep your focus on yourself, live what you're learning, and let that be the example, the lived example. You don't have to cram it down their throat, right? A lot of times people will just be like, hey, I notice this can happen with anything from like literally skincare routine, working out, to mental mindset shifts. Okay. So sometimes people go like, oh my God, your skin looks like it's glowing. What are you doing differently? Right? People will be like, oh, I noticed that you have like more energy, you know, now. Oh my God, it looks like you've changed in some way. What are you doing? It's not because you came in and you're like, I just joined the gym and I stopped eating sugar and I stopped doing this and I stopped doing this. You should do this too. That's not how we change people. Live your life, lead by example. To teach is to demonstrate. Okay, number 2, focus on mutual support. Extend grace for one another. Extend that grace to each other, right? Try to lift each other up. Don't just come in and say, this is what I'm doing. This is what you should do. This is what you need to do. None of that blaming and shaming stuff, right? Really try to just focus on supporting each other. Mutual support. Also communicate your needs. Say, hey, this is what's real. This is what's true for me. This is what's going on inside of me. This is what I've been thinking about, and share it with them. Communicate it with them. Give them an opportunity to say, like, yeah, I can meet you there. I can meet you halfway, or this is what my need is, and this is maybe we can do this together. But you can't expect people to be mind readers. If you're growing and changing on the inside, but you're not talking about it with people, if you're not communicating with people, that's on you. Like, you got to let people know, this is what's important to me. This is what I'm up to. This is what I'm learning. These are the books I'm reading. This is what I'm doing. Like, let them in on the secret. You know what I mean? This is the next one. Share what you're learning, but share it with curiosity. Share it with excitement. Share it with enthusiasm. Share it genuinely because you're excited about it. What you don't want to do is to start to share all this stuff, right, that you're learning or gaining or resources or tools with an expectation that they should want to do it automatically too. Don't share it with an agenda. Don't share it with an expectation. Don't share it with manipulation, and don't share it with judgment. If only you would do this. The reason why it's because you don't, right? Like, people can feel our contempt even if we don't say it. Our energy, our vibe is putting it out there. People can tell when you're looking down on them or if you're silently rolling your eyes at them. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel good. Don't do it. I don't suggest it as a way of getting closer to your partner. Don't be a little shit. Okay. If you are going to share without pressure, right? Share without pressure. I can't tell you how many times parents have done this, partners have done this. They're like, yeah, I just took my Course in Miracles book and like I left it out. Or, oh, I just took that book on meditation and I just left it out. Oh, I took that book on like whatever, name some trauma book, anxiety, but whatever. They're like, yeah, and I just like put it next to their bed, like whatever. I'm like, guys, being sneaky and manipulative, that's not how you win them over, because people aren't stupid. A lot of times they know what you're doing. Yeah, maybe once in a while. Like, just straight up say to somebody, maybe, I'm reading this book. I'm learning so much about myself. Would you like to read it, or whatever you're going to say? But do it genuinely, right? I'd love to have somebody to talk about this stuff with, right? And maybe they don't read. Maybe you offer to get them the audiobook or whatever, right? They don't, read like words, like they don't like physical books, right? There's other ways of doing it. Okay, I got to make this point especially, right? So much is what's happened though. This is the danger of the internet around these kinds of things, around personal development or spiritual growth or change work or whatever, is that we all think that we're like experts now. Just a bunch of pseudo weekend experts, armchair experts, as we say, just walking around. Bunch of people get knowledge off the internet. They watch a ton of those 2-minute, 3-minute, whatever it is, video clips where somebody is basically usually selling a product or a program, their book, their whatever, their system, their 3 steps to thriving with your whatever the bullshit is, right? And because you start to watch all this stuff, then you start to send links to other people. Now, look, we all with our friends go, oh my God, I watched this and thought of you. Like, oh my God, look at, isn't this me? Or, oh my God, this made me think of you and your situation. That's one thing. But when we start to take these things, and then again, I'm saying this twice in this episode because it's important. We go back and we start to pathologize people. We start to psychoanalyze people, and we start to say, I watched this and this is what's wrong with you. Oh my God. It's not like you should watch this. Not, hey, I found this and I thought it was wicked cool. People can sniff your bullshit from a mile away. They know when you're being manipulative. They know when you're making a commentary through what you share. You're making a judgment through what you share. We're all pretty hip to each other. We've lived together. We kind of know each other's business and how we operate. So, just be careful. Be careful with the way you approach things when you start to move on the conveyor belt a little bit more forward. Don't start like belittling, right? The people that you were just previously, shortly, not that long ago, walking right along beside. You know, if you're going to do your work, do it because you want to do it, but don't do it and then turn around and start shitting on the other people. I hope you're hearing how I mean this. I mean it in the most loving way. And hopefully, this has been helpful in some way. And hopefully, you and your people, you and your sweetie, are equally curious, equally want to learn, equally invested in continuing to evolve and grow as human beings, right? Hopefully, your conveyor belts are moving at the same pace, that you get to continue walking along beside each other. Now, remember, there's always going to be periods when one person moves ahead, one person falls behind, or one goes up and one goes down. That's normal. That's just life and humanity and humans, right? We don't want to give up on people because they temporarily have a setback or they feel stuck or they're circling the wagon, right? But hopefully at some point you guys will find that rhythm and that pace and that conveyor belt that's moving in the same, right? The same reason, the same season, right alongside each other. That is my hope for you, that they're moving in the same direction at the same pace, and you can still hold hands comfortably as you walk each other home, as Ram Dass says. So that's what I got for you today. I hope, like I said earlier, it's been helpful in some way. I hope some part of it has landed for you or resonated with you or gave you some more insight, you know? The heartbeat of this whole show is, you know, bringing together personal stories and spiritual, universal spiritual principles in a way that hopefully can just help us navigate this whole being human experience with more grace and sense of humor and just self-awareness, right? I always am just trying to spread a little more love in the world. That's my goal with this. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. If you want to find out what I'm up to, I always have stuff going on between Right Club and my yoga classes and Thai yoga massage, right? Thai yoga body work. The Nest, my group coaching program, my one-to-one work, hot to hot days, the quest, all that stuff. You can find it all on my website. So you can just go to KarenKenney.com. If you want to get this podcast right into your inbox every Thursday, easy peasy, and you want to find out like a heads up first, because when you're on my list, my email list, in my little community, you always find out things first. You can just sign up at KarenKenney.com/sign up. One word, easy peasy. All right, you guys, wherever you go, may you leave the animals and the people and yourself and the planet and the environment better than how you first found it. Wherever you go, may you and your energy, your presence, your love, and the pace that you are on your conveyor belt be a blessing. Bye.